What's up guys, my name is Robin and I make stuff, and today we are painting fall colors on a lake, a little bit of perspective with some snow and a boat. I've been painting a lot of boats lately. I don't know what that's all about. Row, row. I did a quick little study of this boat with fall colors and snow on a lake. That's what we're going for. We're gonna go over wet on wet, lights and darks. Usually in my beginning classes, I make my students go through 3 whole weeks of just ultramarine blue and burnt sienna because I'm mean. Just kidding, because we're focusing on value. This is the first week that they get to step outside that box. I thought, what better than fall leaves? It's gonna be awesome. You're gonna love it. Remember, we're painting light to dark. As always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a like and subscribe to my channel. I love hanging out with you. Let's wrap this up and get to painting. We're gonna draw a horizon line that's gonna go from the left of the page all the way to the right of the page. Do not draw this super dark. There's no need for that. This is just a guide to help you when you're painting on your details. If this is the middle of my paper right here, we'll say, I'm gonna come up from there just a little tiny bit and draw a nice light line across my paper. That's my horizon line. There's gonna be like a cove here and a little boat sitting in this cove. We're not gonna paint the land as though it's straight across. We wanna give it a little bit of a curved feeling or an angled feeling. If you have no clue what I'm talking about, it's okay. Just do what I do. I'm gonna start over here pretty close to this horizon line and start sweeping this in, getting a little bit wider as I go, and like that. The next thing, and I apologize, my camera is being very weird and I've spent the last however many minutes trying to figure it out and it's not helping me. We're going to have some inlets here as though the water has carved out pieces of this land. Sure, you could have it go just like this and be done with it, but I want to create something a little more interesting. We're going to put another line across here, and I think this will make it easier to figure this out. We want it to be parallel with the horizon line and be somewhere in the middle of this line and that line, just as a guide. Let's say here I'm picking a random point and I'm going to go back towards this line and then come back across over here. And then I'm going to come back towards this line, then back across over here. Back towards this line, back across over here. This is helping it get smaller and smaller and smaller. We don't need this line right here. We're going to just erase that. And we also don't need this line right here either. Normally I don't erase, but my students have a tough time with perspective and that's not something that they normally do. It can be a little confusing. Those are pieces of, we'll say hills, little mounds of something. So maybe this one can come out like that a little bit more. This is going to be the shore. Let's come down a little bit further. So you can't necessarily see where that's going. In fact, we can have this go back that way just a little bit more gradually. This is going to be the shoreline. This is all water right here. The waves are going to wave in like this to the shoreline. They're not going to come this way. They're going to follow the edge of the shore and kind of go out that way. We'll get into more of that later. In the meantime, we're going to put a little boat in here. I'll put a reference in the description so you can just download it and then trace it onto your paper. But it's going to come up like this, nice little steep bow of the boat. And this, where it hits the water, we're going to have it go at a bit of an angle. So it's coming into this cove. And that part's going to go up like that. So that's the main section of the boat. This is going to come around like this. And then go beyond that, have a little bit of a flat edge to that, and something like this. Okay, so a boat is essentially like this infinity symbol here. That's kind of what that looks like to me. So we have this comes up like that, flat edge like that, this comes around, and that comes down like that. This is going to have a little bit of a wood detail in the front and a little bit of a trim that comes down like that. There's also going to be a panel in the back here. You could essentially sit on that. And then we'll put another one kind of going like this. All right, and you have to imagine the bottom of the boat is kind of going into the water and disappearing. And then maybe there's a little trim that goes along there. I think that needs to go like that. All right, normally I don't erase, but I don't want you to be confused by whatever I have going on here. There's a lot going on. I'm going to say that this boat, there's maybe something right there, is tied off on shore to a little post that's sticking on the land. And that's how it's staying put. Good job, little boat. We're gonna put some little suggestions of boards running that way, and then we'll do some suggestions of boards running this way, but we're gonna paint that on. This is not a drawing lesson. This is painting, and we're gonna paint. Get a round brush. We are going to wet this entire half of the page right here. We're going to do some wet on wet, dropping in some really nice fall colors, and then we're going to mirror that down below. So for the first part, we're going to get our paper wet, left to right. It doesn't have to be sopping wet. You want to paint it quick. We don't need puddles. I see a lot of people with puddles sometimes, and then you have to spend a lot longer waiting for it to dry or hit it with a hair dryer, which can sometimes also ruin the effect that we're trying to get. But just moving that water left to right, letting it kind of soak in my paper, going right up to that horizon line. Now we're going to start with a little bit of blue. This is fall. So I've already got some blue here, and it's got a little bit of burnt sienna already in it. I'm just going to go with that. If you're just using straight up ultramarine blue, put a little brown in there and make it a little more gray blue. I'm just going to come across here like this. That's about it. I don't want to go all the way down, just about halfway in this section. Now we're going to go fast. We want to add these fall colors in while it's wet. So I'm going to get some cadmium yellow. We're going to start right on the horizon line. Notice my brush is horizontal. You can turn it like this and pull it up, but I'm going to start horizontal and just go into the sky. Then from there, really quickly, you want to mix all the colors yourself. You're welcome to do that. If you want to get orange, you would do some red, but this is alizarin crimson. I'm going to mix some of that up right here, making sure I have a lot of paint. The more paint you have, the more vibrant this will be. Getting some of that cadmium yellow. Notice that I'm not washing my brush out. I like to live on the edge. I hope you do too. Okay, that's kind of a cool orangey red color. Perfect for what we're doing. We're going to come right next to this, touching our paintbrush to that and kind of pulling up. And then maybe I'll get some more red and do something a little more red here. Pulling up. We're going quick because my paper is already starting to dry. More yellowy orange so that it's different than this color, and maybe go right over here. I want this to be a nice clean line. If you wanted to do something kind of fun, you could always come in here and drop a little bit of different colors in there and just let it see what it's going to do. Then on the end, we'll just get some burnt sienna. Maybe these trees have already lost all of their color in their leaves and they're on their way out. Okay, and then over here, we'll do some blue, blue-gray, and that will be more like the trees have all the leaves that are fallen off. This is supposed to look like a big forest of trees that's in the background. So we're not putting a lot of detail into these trees. We want them to kind of disappear into the background. While I have this blue color, I can maybe get it just a tad darker, okay? And then I can tap in just a little bit here along the bottom, some of these, and that will give it just a little bit of depth and shadow. And you just tap it in and you let it go. You let it do its thing. We want the water to determine that for us. I am going to now clean my brush off. While this is still wet, we're going to splatter some clean water in there, holding my finger out, or you could hold another paintbrush, whatever. I'm going to hit this with clean water in it against my finger, and all these little droplets are going to go in there and create some really cool little tiny blooms. And that is a great effect just to maybe give a frosty feel, just create some texture. See, look at what that's doing. It's magical. don't touch it. Just let it go. That's what we're doing now. We're going to let that do what it's going to do. It's going to dry a lot lighter than that. While we're waiting for that to dry, we're going to come down here and we're going to mirror those colors. So where you have yellow here, we're going to put some yellow here. Where you have this bright orange color, we're going to do that here, red here, and so on. So we're going to get everything wet down here, leaving this land dry and the boat dry. And we're going to come and paint blue down here, mimicking the sky. And then we're going to drop in those colors. So again, working quickly. I'm just painting my water in here. Being careful around that land. Anywhere that I paint water is going to tell that paint, hey, you can go there. There's water. Feel free. The paint will follow where the water is. So generally being pretty careful here around my boat and around my land. Putting this water in here. Now, if you get some water on your boat, it is not the end of the world. Do not rip up your paper and think, oh, it's ruined. It's not ruined. We're painting light to dark. That means if you feel like there's something that you don't love, well, the odds are you can fix it because we're going to paint some darker color over in a lot of these areas. Again, we don't want this to be sopping wet, just enough to get that watercolor to flow freely. Wet all the way down into here, and then wet around these little land areas. This is all going to be snow, so we want to keep that white. So now we're going to start with our blue-gray that we used for the sky up above, and we're going to paint this in down here. This is all blue here, so if we want to do some blue right now and kind of mimic that, great. So notice, here's where my blue section is. I'm just kind of mimicking that down below. Tapping it in, not working too hard there. Done. Boom. Just let that do its thing. Now let's come over and we'll do that orange, that orangey color right next to the blue, which is yellow, and a little bit of that red. And it's going to be all the way into here. So just tapping that in, give it a little tappy, and then down here, going around our boat. This is on the water, so it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just reflection. It will dry lighter. And now yellow. Look what that little orange has done inside the yellow. Kind of cool. Get some of our yellow. And just going around the boat, around the land, just kind of tapping it in there. A little bit down here. Tap, tap, tap. I'm not painting. When you paint like that, you're going to move the paint. Now, this is kind of nice. I actually might want to put a little more orange in there. So let me just get some of this and just see what happens if I just kind of dab that in. It's pretty soupy in there. It's going to dry lighter, but that's great. I want that to just do what it's going to do, follow the water, etc. Okay, so we have this color now, which is this color right here. Surprise, surprise. Still have it on the board. Coming down here like this. I noticed that that's more yellow in there, so I'm just going to put some yellow. Going around our little boat, tapping it in. Remember that your watercolor is going to look worse before it looks better. This is all just pre-gaming right now, so put this in and then get on with it, like move on, don't think too hard. Okay, I'm gonna go back and get a little bit of yellow for right in here. We're gonna get some of that red, which is alizarin crimson. If you have other colors that you like using, feel free. This should be fun and just kind of watching what happens. This is very loose, painting very loosely. Okay, around my boat, just tapping this in. Burnt sienna on the end over there. Got a lot of water happening right there. That's okay. Look at that, has gone all the way down like that. Keep in mind, we are going to have a lot of shadow and stuff down in this area because of the reflection of the boat and the light hitting it and casting shadow. So this is going to be really dark down here. I am not worried about anything that's going on. I really want it to be organic and just kind of do what it's going to do. This is a very loose watercolor with some finer details in the boat. Look at that. I'm actually maybe going to pick that up a little bit, clean my brush off, dry it off, come to the end over here. Look at that, it just sucks it up. Clean it off. We need to let that dry. I'm going to move to a smaller round brush and we're going to start working on this boat. For the boat, we're going to work light to dark. We want to paint the boat, almost all of it, with the exception of this bench and that bench, and maybe like a little bit of edge here and there, very light gray. And then we're going to start putting darker details, but we don't want the boat to be white. Even if it was painted white, it wouldn't be white because it would have some sort of change of value with the lighting that's going on outside. I'm going to just get some blue, maybe a little more gray than that. Pretty watered down, like the consistency of tea. We're going to paint that everywhere. So starting up here in this top pointy corner of the hull of the boat, coming down here like this and grabbing some more paint and just kind of going underneath there. So I'm going to plan to leave a little bit of that white, but I'm just kind of quickly filling this in. You notice how those trees in my water dried so much lighter than when they first went on. Maybe you don't remember, but when they first went on there, it was pretty dark going around there, and then a little gap right there to leave that white. This is probably, the boat's going to be the most detailed piece of this painting. And a little bit of a gap right there just to show a highlight. And if you paint over it with this light color, not a big deal. Do not freak out, okay? I feel like I say that a lot. I'm going to paint a little bit along this edge here. And that will just kind of set those down in there, but I did leave that light. That's important. We're going to leave that like that for a second. While we're waiting for that to dry, we're going to come in with a little bit darker gray, blue, and start to really work on these shadows and the reflection of the boat. We're going to set it in there very lightly and then add to it. Now, I've talked about reflection before. Let's talk about it again. Here we have a boat. This boat is the opposite direction of where this boat is pointing. It doesn't matter. This is the bottom of the boat. The reflection is going to be a mirror image. So if we were to mark this with ink and then fold it over, press it down, those lines would be the mirror image of themselves, and that's how the reflection works. So you can see the angle of that boat goes like that. Well, the reflection is just flipped, and now it's going that way. All right. So it's currently going this way. If we pivot it from this point, now it's going to go that way. And if you don't understand what I just did, well, good luck. Essentially, we have this curve of this boat going like this. So the reflection is going to curve down like that. Okay? It's going to make these little tiny arrow shapes. Same with this little stick. The reflection of that on water would go that way. Same with this rope. The reflection of that is going to go that way. It's literally as if you had a mirror, and it's very hard to think about it. I totally understand. Just do what I do. I'm going to get some more of that blue-gray, a little bit darker this time. And as we do this, we want to think about the direction that our waves are coming into shore. Told you we would talk about that again. Here is the line that I drew. Feel free to draw yourself a reference line. As we're drawing these water ripples, yes, there's going to be an invisible boundary that keeps them from going beyond the shape of this and beyond the shape of that line. We want the ripples to all go like this in line with the shore. Let's say that we have a water ripple coming out like this and another one out like that. I'm leaving these gaps in here because those are highlights. And then the water ripple is catching the shadow. Now I don't want to go past that. So there's highlights and shadows in these water ripples. It really might be hard to understand, and I totally get that, but see how all these lines are following the same angle as this line, but see how I'm not going past this curve of this boat shape? So it starts to have a bit of a reflection that mirrors the shape of that boat. You can see it starting to look like the shape of that boat. All right, we're gonna stop that for a second. Now, if there were water ripples that kept going this way, maybe they were lighter because these are gonna be darker, they would all be that same angle. Think about the waves rolling into a shoreline. They're not going like this, and then some are going like this, and then some are going like that. That only happens when something hits the water and causes a wave in a different direction. Nothing's in this water except this boat. Let's move on to the boat itself. We're gonna put a really dark stripe right here, and I'm just using ultramarine blue and my burnt sienna. Now I'm using this student grade watercolor. It is not the highest quality, but it's great if you are just starting out and you want a little less commitment. I would strongly recommend that, and you can get that from my supply list. I'm just going to do a stripe down here, planning to leave the other piece of that unpainted. Now when we think about this boat, if we were looking at the top, the shape of that boat is going to look something like this from up above. This area right here is much wider. There's our little boat. So cute. We have these boards that are going from the front here all the way to the back. But in this section, they're getting closer and closer together because this section is flared out. So you can't see every single board. We're going to paint them, get skinnier and closer. Then up here, a little more spread out, getting closer and closer and closer. Up here, a little more spread out. And maybe they start to spread back out down there again. So when I paint that, I want to keep that in mind. So I'm going to start here, following underneath this ridge, lifting my brush up just a little bit to get that line a little thinner. Okay, and then I'm going to do the next one. Wider, getting thinner, closer, and then maybe spreading back out. Wider up here, thinner, closer. And it's okay if they end up touching down here. That's not a big deal. You can feel how that starts to feel more spread out and this starts to feel a little more compressed. And that's what we want to have happen. Now, there's shadow underneath, and that shadow is going to be on the right side, getting lighter over on that side. So just getting a little bit more of my paint. I'm going to put a little bit on this and leaving that white edge, painting underneath there, not all the way. I'm going to show you what to do. We're going to soften that up a little bit. So painting about to there. Then I'm going to clean my brush out, dry it off a little bit, and then kind of just soften that up, pulling that color out just a little bit. And if you find that you're just moving color around, start from this side and pull it back towards itself. Create a nice soft edge. We're going to come underneath this edge in here and just put a little bit of a dark suggestion with some of these little lines, and those are just boards inside the boat. You just clean your brush off and kind of soften those up. Kind of pull some of that paint back out. This has dried now, and we're going to get a little bit darker. So mixing my paint up, ultramarine blue, burnt sienna. I want this to be really dark where the boat hits the water. I'm going to start coming back out a little bit here, but I don't want to go all the way out. I want it to be the darkest where the boat is close to the water. And there's all sorts of variations of values in here. And that's important. That's why I'm not going over the same exact lines, but I am still keeping the angle the same. So you can see now it's starting to feel like there's some water ripples going on in here. Let's also paint this little post. We have that dark in there. What we can do now is clean our brush off a little bit, get a little bit lighter version of that color, and make longer ripples. So I have a lot of water on my brush, a little bit of that color, and I'm just kind of rippling and dragging my brush lightly across. And I don't want to do a whole full line, but just some suggestions of these longer ripply waves in here. We don't want to go forever out there, just like it's in the shore, and here's where the waves come onto the shore. These are going to dry so much lighter. You can do some thick ones, lifting up, but following that line. Okay. While we have this blue color, we want to put a little bit of shadow underneath these pieces of land. If you drew your land straight across, no worries. You're just going to put a little bit underneath that. If you drew more of this sweeping line, you're just going to put a little bit of shadow underneath that. We want that to feel like it's not floating. I'm going to get a little bit of this color. You want it to be crisp along the edge. Like that. Clean your brush off, dry it off, come down to the bottom of where you painted and just start to pull that color down by putting some water on my paper. Now I've given it a place to move to. All the way back in here. Coming back this way. Thinking of that mirrored image and that angle. Okay, the next one. And the next one. I'm going to put a little bit more up here. I want this to be darker and heavier. Always darker and heavier towards the front typically, because you have more detail in the front. You don't have as much atmospheric perspective, which is that haze that you get from things that are further away in the distance. Put a little bit more here, maybe back in this section. And then it just starts to feel like, okay, this land isn't floating. There's definitely something going on. While this is wet, I'm literally just tapping my brush. A little bit of reflection from this guy. So like I said, it's going to go for the opposite angle. It's that mirrored image. Now we want to really start to put our darks in here. This is going to be the darkest section of the boat up in the front. I'm going to kind of blend some of these lines together and then making sure that this area right here stays the lightest. It's catching the most light. So a little bit of light in here, a lot of light in here, and dark down here, dark up here, and then we'll add some more darks. So I'm going to come in here in the top, flatten my brush out a little bit, just kind of give it some darker details all the way to the bottom, blending that shadow. Most of the dark is going to be in this front end up here. All right, so suggestion of these boards. This is highlighted. We can kind of wait for that to dry. And maybe that goes like that. A little bit darker in here. Soften that up a little bit. Dry it off and kind of moving that color. And then maybe kind of moving it back towards itself. And while I have a little bit of that on my brush, I'm just gonna kind of do a little line right there. And maybe like that. Get a script liner brush and throw in some really fun little details. Script liner or a rigger, something that has hardly any bristles on it is what we're going for. And then we can kind of put some really fine line details, put the suggestion of this tie-off rope in here. So I'm really gonna kind of scoop this up. This paintbrush literally has like 2 bristles on it. We're not outlining. Please do not outline. If you're someone that really likes to outline, I would suggest doing pen and ink, but even then, you don't want to outline the entire thing. Leave a little bit of suggestion and let your eye do the rest. So I'm gonna put a suggestion of something being tied in the front of the boat. We'll do a little bit of line work right here for that. And then maybe back here in the corner, and there's a loop or something over there, maybe a loop over there. You know, just the suggestion, just a few little suggestions. Maybe one right up in the front. We can also put some little loop tie-off things kind of around the edge of the boat. I didn't outline anything. I put a couple little lines, just the suggestion. Get a little bit more of that dark gray color real quick and kind of blend these two colors together just a little bit more. I feel like I can see where the water is and the boat ends and all of that, and I don't like that. So let's move on. We're gonna do some trees. I'm gonna be more strategic about where I'm putting these trees. We don't want them to have a ton of detail. We don't want them to be all the same weight and size and darkness all the way across. We want this to be the biggest, thickest tree, darkest tree. And as they go along this line, they're going into the distance. We want them to get lighter. So this first tree is going to be the darkest. I'm going to use this script liner brush. And we're going to do a line that starts here and goes up to the left very slightly. And then we'll do another one that starts at the bottom down here where that one started. And we'll go up to the right very slightly. Notice I'm kind of going all over the place there. I want that to feel a little more real. I'll put a little bit of dots and stuff down there. Just a few. With the tip of my brush, I can just kind of wander it around, kind of coming up, coming out from the suggestion of those bigger trunk branch areas. These are the trees that have really lost their leaves. So just letting that tip of that paintbrush kind of dance around on the paper. Some of those branches are lighter, some of them are darker, indicating that maybe there's some in front of the others, just like that. So then we'll do another one, maybe, let's skip a spot actually. Let's do one over here. I want this to be a little bit lighter, so I'm gonna get some more water on my brush here. All right, so we're gonna come in here, same concept, kind of going off to the left a little bit, meeting that one down at the bottom, going off to the right, and then just kind of doing those branch dancing movements. So I like to drag it versus pulling it. My students really enjoyed playing with these little script or rigger brushes. It's pretty fun when you just kind of let it do what it's going to do. See what happens. A little bit shorter trunk, a little lighter in color everywhere, helps push it to the back. And now we want to put snow. There's some snow, and that's going to be blue. We're going to go back to our little round brush, and I'm going to get some blue. Blue is great for suggesting snow. So I'm just going to come from the bottom here and just kind of do a few little strokes of blue, kind of messy like. You can really see that kind of come together. There's some snow back there. That looks pretty snowy. And then we're going to do reflection of these trees in the water. There's just going to be some dark straight lines coming down, and we'll soften it up, and they're going to skip a few spots because these ripples are going to break up the stillness of the water. Getting this nice dark color, do a little space, so not right up on the edge, just a little bit of a gap, and we're going to come straight down. Now, if you want to smooth out that edge up here, you know what to do. Clean your brush out, dry it off, and pull it back into itself just a little bit. You can also do a few little squiggles there, just kind of following those ripples that I put in there. We're going to do the same thing from this one. Skipping a little bit of a space, coming straight down, maybe something like that. Clean off my brush, pull that back just a little bit. A little bit of a space, coming straight down. And then over here also. Maybe that's the suggestion of some of those branches that catch in the ripples. That's it. Let's take the tape off. If you want to add a little more depth right here on the back of this boat, really easy. All you would do is get just a little bit of your gray color once your boat is dry. Come in back here and just kind of sweep across Or if you want to do the same thing over here to really punch that highlight. Didn't turn out so bad, and it was pretty fun. Thanks for hanging out with me. I will see you next time that I make stuff.